Hey, what's up guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm gonna be showing you how to remix any track and how to quantize it in case it's needed. Quantizing basically means ensuring that the song always lands on beat. This is super useful for songs that are played live because they always tend to drift a little bit around the BPM. So I will show you how we can fix that. Alright, so we're here in Ableton and the song that I chose to work on today is 505 by the Arctic Monkeys. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna prepare the whole song and the stems to be able to remix them without any issue. So the first thing I did is I got all the stems for the song. To get them, I used this service called lalal.ai. As you can see, I was just exporting the drums. Here you can go into Stem Splitter. You can just upload your file. And basically what I did is first I split the vocal from the instrumental, then the bass, then the drums, and so on. You can do as many stems as you feel like you need. In my case, I feel like just with the bass, vocals, drums, and instruments is plenty. And when you're remixing a track, sometimes I only end up using the vocal, but I like to have this flexibility to use any of the other elements if I want. Now I imported the original plus the stems into Ableton. To do this, you can just drag them from a folder. And if you just drag them in like this, it would normally put them one after the other. But what I would recommend you do is you drag them in here and then you press command on your keyboard, and now as you can see it's going to create a separate track for each, and then you can just rename them to whatever you want. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to search for the key and the BPM of the track online. In case you already know them, you don't need to. It says C major and 140 BPM. So at first we're going to put our tempo to that C major. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that all of them are starting at the same position. Sometimes when you drag them in, some will start later than others, so we want to make sure that they're all the same length at the beginning and at the end. So here you see some of them, we just have to extend them a little bit. That's perfect. And now we're going to highlight everything and put it to the beginning of a bar that we want. You can do it at the very beginning, you can do it after the 32nd bar, 64th bar. We're going to do it at the 64th, so right there. Now if we press play, it's going to sound like this. Stop. As you can hear, some of the drums go slightly off beat, and that's what we're gonna fix. There's really two ways of doing it. First, you can quantize the whole original track and then grab the stems from the quantized version, or you could just export all of the stems from the very original without quantizing and then quantize each stem separately. I prefer to quantize each stem separately because then it gives me more control if I want to move things around, but you can do whatever you think fits the best. Now I'm going to mute the original track just so I don't get copyrighted, and we're going to grab the drums and we're going to put them at the very bottom. This is very important because now we're going to highlight everything and pressing shift on my keyboard, and we're going to press warp. We're going to put this on complex pro with these settings. Just gonna give us the highest quality. And now whatever I highlight last, so in this case the drums, is gonna be what I see here. Now I can just press solo and it's gonna sound like that. As you can see, they're slightly off. So to fix that, I'm gonna create a marker here. And as you can see, I'm moving the drums, but all of the other stems are moving alongside with it. And so now whatever changes I make here to the warping, it's gonna create them to all of the stems. I wouldn't recommend you quantize every single note because then it's going to get super tedious. It is a bit of a time-consuming process. And so I like to just quantize like every 4 beats more or less, just to make sure that it's always landing on time. And if I go into every single track, you can see that all of the markers are being transferred. And you could also just highlight and do Command U to quantize it automatically. But I find that sometimes Ableton messes it up. So I just prefer to future-proof myself and do it manually and avoid having to correct any mistakes later. So in case you're tired of the drums, you can also do it with the bass. We're going to put it as the last one. We're going to click on solo. And the bass is also a good one that usually marks the rhythm. And always go back and check with the other stems and see if it sounds fine. They sound good to me. Now, for example, in this section, the snare comes in, so it's very important to get that snare on time. And I know a lot of people, they get a bit angry when you quantize songs that are played live because they say that you're removing the live feel from it. But right now we're just doing it to be able to remix it properly without having any issues down the line where sounds drift apart and everything. And you can always just add a swing after, which is gonna make it sound like it was played live again, or at least give back some of that human touch. So I don't see any issue with it. You can also play with the grid size here to make your life easier to be able to snap things quicker. You see now I have it just on half, so it either snaps this. If I do command 1, now I have it to 1/4, so now I can snap into smaller fractions. Then this is 1/8 and 1/16. So I would just leave it at 1/8. I'm just gonna keep doing this and speed it up, and I will see you guys in a second. Alright, so there I have quantized pretty much everything except the very beginning, but this one is very easy to do. I'll just go into the instruments, just like the chords on the guitar. I'm just gonna put this one at the beginning. So that's fine right there. Just making sure I set a marker at every chord change. I missed one here at the beginning. So you see that one was a bit early, so I'm just gonna move it. This one was a little bit late. A little bit early. Yeah, that's good. And then the drums came in here, so I know that this whole section is gonna be fine. And the last thing I wanted to say is that in case that you see that like your tempo gets messed up, these gray markers are the ones that determine the BPM. So just by you moving them around, you're basically going to like either speed up or slow down the track. And then once you double click on it, then that part is set. So it's not gonna change. So now that we have all of the stems ready, you can really just take any direction you want to create the remix. Something that I would suggest is try to recreate the chords so you can have the MIDI or like any melodic elements that you want to retain from the same song. I would encourage you to try to recreate them rather than just using the audio sample, because that not only is going to give you more control if you want to change the sound or change how it's played or something, but it's also going to give you higher quality because all of these stems are taken with AI. So the quality is not going to be as great as if you played with your own synthesizers. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a tempo for my remix. In this case, the original track is at 140. So I'm just going to slow it down a little bit to maybe like 136, 135. And now the most important thing is that if you choose to chop up the song and not only just put some drums under it, but sort of rearrange it, you have to make sure that you at least take like the whole 4 or 8 bars of it and copy it just like that. Then you can move the markers around, but don't just like take this bit and try to fit it wherever, unless you're doing it intentionally. But when you chop it up like this in like whole sections, you're basically ensuring that it's always going to stay in time and you're not going to run into the issue of feeling that it's out of time or it doesn't fit in the track. To demonstrate this, I'm just going to create a simple drum groove. So now we have like a standard 909 kick. I'm just going to do a little fade out towards the end. And now if I were to put some of the instruments on top, this is what it would sound like. One thing that I really like to do is I like to recreate the bass lines. So in here, I'm just gonna find the bass notes. To do that, I'm gonna chop this area, right click and do convert melody to MIDI track. The convert to melody is ideal when you're trying to just figure out singular notes, and then the convert to harmony is better when you are trying to figure out chords or multiple notes playing at once. So I'm gonna do that for the instruments right here, and let's see what that sounds like. You see, Ableton tried its best to find the chords. We're gonna have to tweak some of them, but that's plenty to start working with. And also for this bassline, we only just really need to see which notes it is playing. In case Ableton is not finding the correct pitch or something for the bass, you can also try just using a tuner. And that's gonna try its best to tell you what pitch is playing. But this only really works if it's a singular note playing, not when it's multiple chords. So we're just gonna put this like that. Okay. we know that those are like basically the bass notes of our track. I'm just gonna check if it changes later on. For example, here, it goes like up and down. Dun, 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 dun. So I'm gonna also grab that and do convert melody. So I think it's something like this. Of course, you're gonna have to tweak them, quantize them by doing Command U. So that's our second bass line. And I'm just gonna go into the drop and see if it changes. Do, 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 do. Okay, so it's just the same thing looping over and over. So I'm just gonna grab the first loop and do convert melody to new MIDI track. And now we have this. That's plenty to work with. So now we have basically the 3 different bass lines that go throughout the song, and then we can choose which one we want to use, if we want to use the 3 of them, if we want to modify them, if we want to change the sound. This is the first one that goes to D to E, then this is the second one. That introduces this G note, and then the third one. So that's perfect right now. Now I'm gonna check these chords. I'm just gonna grab the first ones and extend them all over. And I'm pretty sure it's just this looping over and over. I'm just gonna see if there's any extra notes being played after. So I'm gonna grab those, lower the velocity of this one by holding Command. And I'm just gonna highlight this here and do Command L to loop that section. Delete everything else. And Command U to quantize the notes, and legato so they fill out the whole space and they touch the end of the other one. So that's our chords. At this point, I would just literally change the sounds and start experimenting with creating my own drum grooves and stuff. Of course, you can use some of these drums if you want to. I like to just maybe sample some of it, maybe like the snare. Another cool technique that you can do is like grab one section, bring it into a new track, loop it, Command L, and then instead of going to complex where you can go into beats mode, go into these transients and lower this. And this is basically going to grab all of the little transients, which are like these high peaks that you see, which represent all of the different drum hits. And it's basically going to just make every drum hit shorter by just keeping the transient and removing everything that's after it. So this is the original one. And this is with the transients. And then here you can, of course, go and quantize this even further by putting the grid to 116. And now you can do Command U. And now we can just include this in our drum groove, whatever we decide to do with it. It's up to us, but we can, like, for example, include it here. And now we just have like a top loop that goes over everything. Now I'm going to try to sample the snare. And I'm just going to drag this snare into a new track. Now you can do like a little fade out. And that sounds pretty good to me. So now we can consolidate this, Command J, turn it into its own audio sample. And we are going to go in here and create a new MIDI track. And we are just going to copy that sample, Command C, Command V, paste it over here, and just do your standard snare or clap pattern. And here we can do a little fade out. And now we are left with this. Of course, you can change the sample if you want. You can layer it with another snare or something. I think that sounds a bit better. And I'm just gonna try to layer it with something else. So I'm gonna do Command G to group this. This is gonna be like OG snare. And let's see if I can find like a cool clap that I can layer on top. I'm just gonna drag this clap here. And now the same MIDI is going to play 2 different samples. This is the first one. is the second one, and together they sound like this. So you can always change the sound. Let's say we want this one instead. And we can change the volumes of each one. We can EQ them separately. So for example, this clap, I'm just gonna put the EQ, but instead of putting it here, which will affect the whole sum of the two sounds, I'm gonna put the EQ over here. So now it's only gonna be part of this clap channel. And I could EQ this like a little bit like that. And I could EQ the snare like this, or I remove some of that low end. Maybe remove a little bit of this peak. Or actually increase it if I want to. And now we are left with this. I'm just gonna turn up the kick a little bit in volume. That's good. Also, I wanted to ask you guys if you would be interested in me creating my own sample pack, just a big collection of all of the sounds that I use. If that's something you would like to see, make sure you leave it in the comments or DM me on Instagram so I can make it and you guys use it in your own production. Now, I actually really like this version of the bassline, so I'm gonna copy it, create a new MIDI track, paste it here, and I'm gonna go in Serum and I'm just gonna pick a sound that I like. For instance, I'm gonna go into this preset that I tend to use quite often from Evo Sounds. I'm gonna quantize everything by highlighting and doing Command U. So here I'm missing one note. That's quite bouncy, I like it. I'm gonna put a sidechain on it. I really recommend using this Kickstart plugin because then you can just grab the kick that we're gonna rename. You can grab it from the sidechain input, and now you can see how long your kick is and really dial in that sidechain. And you can set it so it's triggered by every time the kick plays. So when there's no kick, you see there's no sidechain. So now let's hear how that sounds. Now I'm gonna fix some of the note lengths. So you can see some of them sort of cut off or like they overlap with each other. That's quite nice. Now you can go into your presets and you can see if this velocity is routed to something. In this case, it's routed to the filter cutoff. So I'm just gonna play with the velocities and see how that changes the sound. So as you can see, it opens it up more than if it was like this. A little bit with it. That's pretty nice. Now I can see whether I want to use the chords. So I'm just gonna bring them in here and I'm gonna change the sound as well. Maybe some sort of pad would be nice. I'm gonna remove this movement by right clicking and doing bypass all destinations. So now there's none of that movement anymore. I can now put the volume a bit higher and see how that fits. I'm just gonna lower the volume of this bass a little bit. Maybe look for a different preset. I like this one better. Always try to modify the presets a little bit, see if it fits the track better. press on loop for the bass line, so it always keeps looping. Now I can see if I can fit some of these vocals. So as I said before, I'm just gonna grab the whole section and just extend it so it starts off properly. And now let's see how that sounds. So if I feel like some of the parts are slightly off, I can just go and tweak them here. I think that fits fine. Maybe this one we can put a bit sooner. This part I want to change a little bit, so I'm just gonna put these markers so I don't change anything before or after. I'm just gonna tweak this. This I'm gonna put a tiny bit earlier. Now, once you're here, it's a matter of adding more elements, arranging the track, seeing what other parts of it you can use. For example, this guitar here, I really like. So I know I want to use that at some point. I'm gonna just bring it in here and see what I can do with it later. I'm also just gonna highlight this area, do Command-Shift-D to duplicate it so I can gain some more space, and just bring in the bass at the 30-second mark. So I'm gonna highlight this one, Command-Shift-Delete. Let's add some more drums. So I'm gonna just add a hi-hat. That one is kind of cool. In here. And I'm just gonna loop this. Maybe a different one. Classic 909. That works. Shorten it. And this, I'm also gonna filter in these chords. So they don't come in so aggressively. Also gonna do some volume automation for them. I'm also gonna loop this bass part once more. So I can introduce this even slower, just gain some more time. Something like that. Then for this section, I'm gonna duplicate the kick. And for this second one, I'm gonna apply an auto filter to have a filtered kick. And then bring it back to the other one. Same thing here. And then I think here I'm gonna just remove this. Doesn't come in yet. I'm just gonna do Command I and insert a lot of space here so it doesn't bother me. So for example, even this section here, I would change it into more of a build-up. So let's get like a 909 snare. Also the bass, I'm gonna start filtering it out. I can also open up the filter during this section. Let's work on that build up. And of course, this is all just preference. Some things that I might be doing right now, you wouldn't have done just because it maybe doesn't fit your style. But the purpose of this tutorial is just to show you guys how to set up the songs so you can remix them properly. And if you like what I'm making right now, great. But if not, at least I hope that you learn how to quantize them, especially if they're played live, which a lot of 80s and 90s tracks are. So if you want to remix those, it's very important to know how to do that properly. Trying to keep like a more deep and groovy style for this. I'm gonna loop this section twice. Then we can go into another build up here. And I think that's where we can introduce this guy right there that I wanted to use earlier. Yeah. This I'm gonna tweak a little bit so it doesn't come in so aggressively. And maybe we sidechain that as well. Maybe we speed up the track a little bit, 138. I think that might fit better. Or 137. I want to do a break here before that vocal comes in. Maybe we lower the volume of those chords a little bit. And of course, we're missing a lot of drum elements. Let's add some rides. Classic one. Let's see if that works. And the way you program the rides is that you have one that's lower velocity than the second one. And to take it a step further, you could even apply some sidechain to that first one. Something like that. Let's add a crash. I'm just gonna use one that I really like. And let's get this like that. Now we can do a little crash fill before the drop. Maybe we introduce this one like so we kind of tease it that something is coming. Of course, then you can work on the vocals, so let me do that a little bit. I'm going to apply some reverb. And you can go in here and tweak the vocals further. I'm going to create a return channel here and just apply a very short feedback with some delay. When I get a compressor, and sidechain that to the vocal. So the echo only plays when the vocals go quieter. And also here I have to EQ this bass before the drop, so it comes in and hits harder. Something like that. You can also open it up with the filter. Now it's a time where I would like to add a few drum loops. I always advise to create the main drums first, and then to sort of fill up the space a little bit, you can use loops, but don't just rely on the loops from the get-go, because then it's gonna be a mixing nightmare in case you wanna just put maybe the hi-hat or the club from a whole loop that has maybe 6 or 8 elements. If you wanna change the volumes of each one individually, it's going to be quite hard. So I'm sort of feeling like some trancey drums, something a bit like this faster. I think this one is quite good, so let me just bring that in. And I actually like that clap as well. So I'm just gonna grab that and try to steal the clap from it. Here, let's see how that sounds. Yeah, it works. So now same thing, I could consolidate it into its own thing, bring it into my drum rack here and fit it to the rest. Something like that. And of course lower the volume of this. I can do the transients. We definitely need some more drums. I also really like using drum breaks like this. So let's just try that to see if it fits in any other part of the song. I'm thinking in these breaks where the singer sort of goes quiet. Let's see if any of those fits. Something like that can work. Actually, I think like just in general, I think it can be part of the whole drum groove. For example, let's say I want to just mute the clap from the sample. I could even go in here and just chop it, or I could also just go in the envelope section, go in the clip, gain, and just sort of draw this shape where it goes all the way to 0. You see, and now it basically mutes that. And I can still quantize everything to go back to the sample. Yeah, that works. Gonna lower the snare a little bit, and I actually like that clap as well from this. So let's just see how many claps is too many. Also, like if you find that you just keep on layering and layering and layering elements, then that might be a sign that the ones that you have already don't really work that great, and you're just trying to make up for poor sound selection, which might be the case right now. I'm not saying that I'm perfect or anything, but that's sort of the advice that I give you. So I'm gonna see if I should take my own advice as well. I'm just gonna duplicate this and remove the other 3 that I had layer and see if something like this works best, or if I can just include it as an extra layer on top of everything, which I think it might work. Maybe make it a bit shorter. And really just see like if it's necessary, if it adds anything. I think it might work. Something like that maybe. Volume automation for the drum break. And I would say we can also just modify this bassline so it's not always the same. But that's pretty cool already. Maybe just one crash right there on the drop. Let's get some more drums going. This crash is cool as well, with a lot of reverb. Let's see if that one would work instead of the one that I have. I think we're better with just this one. Yeah, cleaner. For example, this open hat I quite like, so I'm gonna include it. Now I could do like a small fade in so it comes in a bit smoother. Helps to fill up the space. And this breakbeat, I'm gonna lower it in volume during this break and then bring it back up. And this bass, I think it can actually go in this section. I'm going to bring in a re-space for this break and just use these notes. I'm gonna put them all at the same volume. I'm going to create it from scratch. In case you want to learn how to create your own re-spaces, I'm going to link a video, I think, up here maybe. And it's one that I made a long time ago where you can learn how to do it with different methods. I'm just going to do it here quick with a +7, which I think can sound quite cool. Maybe that fits better in here. We can open it up. This loop, I'm gonna quantize it. And I'm just gonna include a swing to the whole track. So I'm gonna grab all of my drum elements and apply a groove to all of them. Just like that. Let's add a high string. Playing just C in a very high pitch. Now I'm just going to organize this project a little bit. So I'm going to make this a cake group. I'm going to color it blue. Then I am going to grab my bass, make this a bass group as well. Then I'm going to grab all of the drums. Put them in their own group, drum group. Color it light blue. Then I'm going to create a synth group, which is gonna have the chords, the strings and everything like that. Okay. And I'm just gonna have like an FX group with like for the crashes and risers, snare buildups and everything. Just curious to see if another bass would work better. Maybe something like this. Maybe that. Let's try it. I think I like it better, yeah. Let me add some more energy to these drums. Also, I'm gonna apply a decapitator to all of them to really saturate them all together. So I've just added this sort of fake drop here. This is something that I like to do to keep the arrangement more interesting. It sounds like this. Just some filters, and then I remove the drums over there, and that's pretty much it. Now I want to show you guys quickly what I do for my mixing and my mastering. If I was going to release this song, of course I would spend much more time on it. If you guys want me to do a completely separate video on mixing and mastering, make sure you leave it in the comments. But for all of my groups, I just lower the volume a little bit so I can have some headroom. And for each one, I sort of make sure that all of the levels are in place. So for example, for my drums, I have a decapitator, a saturator, and a clipper. This was just like removing some of those unnecessary transients that are gonna trigger our limiters and our compressors in the master chain. So I just try to get rid of them to the point where it's working, but it's not really too audible. And sort of the same for each of these channels. So some compression and some limiting for the synth group. For the vocal, I have this voice enhancer preset from Ableton, which just compresses it as well. Then for my bass group, I just have a kick tight and a compressor, and that's for the mixing side of things. Now for the master chain, these are like all of the plugins that I always use. Just a limiter, a compressor, a saturator, an EQ, and a limiter at the end as well. I will just turn all of them off at first and explain how they work. People always ask me like, what do I use for my master chains? And it's just all stock Ableton plugins. So for the limiter, first, I'm just gonna loop like sort of this section here. And I'm bringing the limiter down to sort of squish the signal as much as I can without really hearing any distortion. So as you can see right now, the highest gain reduction that it's doing, it's like around -2.5. That would be like sort of the maximum that I would go to. I feel like anything above 2.5 -3, it starts getting too distorted. So I would even lower this a little bit more just to prevent any distortion. Then I have a compressor, which I put it to the point barely like where the needle is moving. So sort of there. This is just to like compress the signal once again. And I put the soft clip mode on. This is just going to make it so when we boost our signal, the highest it can be is -0.5 dB. That's very necessary because then we're going to be applying a little bit more effects that we need that 0.5 dB headroom to work with. And of course, like you can play with the order of these plugins. For me, I just like this order. I feel like it works the best for me, but for different people, some other order might be better. Then the next step is I just put this makeup gain from 0 to 6.5, like there. Then I add a little bit of saturation and a bit of an EQ. I'm trying to target like around -36 on my drums and like around -32, 33 for my bass. This is a plugin called Span by Voxengo, and it's super useful. I use it for all of my tracks in the mixing and mastering. And I also use this Ulin loudness meter to check the average loudness of the track. I try to aim for like -7, -7.5 for this type of track. It all depends on the genre, how energetic the track is, etc. And as I always say, this is what works for me. I'm not a mastering engineer, so always take everything I say with a grain of salt and then see if it works for you as well. Then I have another limiter at the end, limiting everything to 0 dB and then just boosting the signal a tiny bit more, trying to get as much loudness as I can without distorting. So now if I press play for the drop, it sounds like this. So around -33-ish for our high frequencies and around -30, -33 for our bass frequencies. And we are around -7 loves. So that's gonna be it, guys. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions about the video, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or in the comments. I always try to answer to as many questions as you guys have. I also offer one-to-one classes for producers that are just starting out or that want to get a bit more advanced. If that's something that you're interested in, make sure you check the link in the description. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.